Welcome to sportspicks.locals.com and Sports Wars, where you can like, share, and subscribe this video preview of the National College Football title game between the TCU Horned Frogs and the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia, more expected to be here than other teams, is a big favorite tonight against TCU, who was never expected this season to be in the national title game. Indeed, they're one of the biggest long shots to ever reach the national title game in the history of the college football BCS era. TCU is also, for example, one of the only teams to ever make a college football national title game without a top 5 recruiting class. Georgia, by contrast, has been one of the elite recruiting programs for the last several years, has been in the national title hunt almost every year under Kirby Smart, including both winning the national title last year, losing the national title game to Alabama a few years before. While in Sonny Dykes' very first season, he turned around a team with a losing record, and his spread record history of covering big games continued throughout this season. The spread is started out at about 13 points, dropped to 12, as almost 3/4 of the public is hammering the TCU Horned Frogs as they believe their streak of spread success will continue in the big game. While smart money dropping the spread down to about 12, while smart money came in at the very end and bet Georgia, and leading it back to about 13 and a half, with a total around 62 to 63, depending on where you are in the country or around the world. Basically, the predicted score is something like 37 to 24, 38 to 25, something in that neighborhood or range. The belief is that TCU will get theirs, but not get what they've been getting throughout most of the season, while Georgia will get pretty close to their season average, but maybe a little bit below. A range of season interesting game props, including whether Max Duggan will rush for a touchdown, given some running back injury issues and his recent history of doing so, whether or not Stetson Bennett will throw an interception, whether Stetson Bennett will get over 275 yards, whether the second half will be higher scoring than the first half. A lot of these prop bets really assume that TCU will struggle to score, that Georgia will jump to a big lead, and then sit on the ball. For example, quite unusually, the second half is projected by many of these prop bets to be lower scoring than the first half. That is not a common phenomenon in either college football or the NFL, where typically the second half is higher scoring, particularly if the second half at your individual sports book includes overtime, as it typically does. So if you think TCU may cover this game, there may be a range of ways to bet it other than the straight-up spread. Now, some other interesting history is that when there has been a big talent mismatch in the national title game, the more talented team has won by 14 or more pretty much every time, whether it's in the whether the semifinals of the playoffs during that series, or whether we go back further and look at games like Miami-Nebraska 2001 and other matchups where a lesser talented team found its way in the national title game, but was really mismatched against an uber talented team, which is what is present here. So we'll see. The best argument for TCU includes not only Sonny Dykes' record, their record this season, the grittiness of their staff and team. And as someone who shorted TCU throughout much of the year, got burned for doing so, more arguments for TCU. Also, you could look at games like LSU, Ohio State. Both of their explosive passing games gave Georgia's defense some fits. You could look at the way their defense shut down, TCU's defense shut down Texas. And of course, is coming off the big upset of Michigan with 2 pick sixes against an offense that hadn't been throwing picks coming into that game. So those are some of the arguments for TCU. The arguments for Georgia are simple: talent, and more talent. They got NFL talent all over the field, offensively and defensively. One of the most talented teams in the history, frankly, of college football is Georgia. There's a reason why they're playing for back-to-back national title games. And then you have Kirby Smart, who has a week to prepare. And you look at what happens when you have a week to prepare. You could look at Texas' defensive scheme against TCU, where they basically shut them down. when TCU has faced a elite offense, more often than not, they've given up about 7 yards per play, which usually is about 40 to 42 points a game. When they faced an elite defense, which hasn't, top 30 defense, which hasn't been very common this year, they've been more likely to score in the lower 20s than they have in the high 20s or mid 30s or something that could actually conjure up an upset. They're about 5-1 underdogs to win straight up. Georgia's about a 5-1 favorite on the money line as well. So you look at all of these historical factors. You look at the statistical profiles of these teams coming in. When Georgia has faced a team offense that's built on scheme rather than talent, Georgia, whether it's Oregon or Florida or Tennessee or Mississippi State, which TCU's offense incorporates aspects of, Georgia has dominated. They have suffocated those teams. The only offenses that have moved the ball on them are ones with a lot of NFL wide receiver talent like LSU and Ohio State or Alabama last year in the first game in the SEC title game, but not the national title game when their receivers went down. All of a sudden, Alabama's offense went in the tank like everybody else's against Georgia in the last 2 seasons. So all of those factors suggest the reason why smart money is betting Georgia tonight is these historical numbers, these statistical profiles, the matchup simulations, and the talent profiles all suggest Georgia big. But TCU has been wearing the Cinderella shoe all year, and they might continue to. What are your thoughts, Cricket?
Oh, man, two teams with two very, very different storylines right here. You got Georgia, like I said, trying to go for back-to-back national titles, be the first team to do that in the CFP era. Only 10 times since World War II has a team been able to win back-to-back national championships, and 6 of those teams had to do it with a split national championship. Only 4 times have teams done it outright. The last time being in 2011, 2012 when Alabama did it before the CFP started, the old school days of the BCS. And then TCU's a probable run, man. They become the first team in the CFP era to make the national championship game when starting the preseason ranked outside of the top 15, and 14 of those 16 participants in the national championship game have been ranked in the preseason top 6. So they are definitely something different that we have not seen before, and it's got a fun feel for it though, man. But I think some of the keys for TCU to be able to win tonight's game, one of the big ones for me is offensive balance. 6 games this season, they've had over 40 plus carries in a game, including last week against Michigan in that big time semifinal win. And they use this ground game, they use the horizontal passing game in space to be able to open up some of those deep balls down the field. I mean, this is a team that averages 3.4 gains per game of 30-plus yards and 1.5 gains per game of 50-plus yards. So they have relied heavily on the big play this year. They're second only to Tennessee in those categories. So that's a big thing for me, being able to balance the offense, get the running game involved. Is Kendre Miller going to be able to go tonight? The stud running back for TCU got banged up in that Georgia game, re-aggravated a knee injury, but the backup stepped in, filled in admirably in his absence, rushed for a career-high 150-plus yards. So are they going to be able to establish that running game against a stout Georgia front and be able to open up that balance where Max Duggan takes some of the pressure off of him, kind of where he can use some of those downfield balls to Quentin Johnson and some of those plays that have helped them be successful all year long? So that's a big key for me, is the offensive balance, and if they're able to get that ground game established early on. Another big one for me is converting what I like to call the money downs, 3rd and 4th down. They went 8 of 16 against Michigan, converting 50% of those such opportunities, where Michigan was only 3 of 15 for only 20%. So they have to win that money down battle. That's going to be a big key for them to be able to, have big downs, win first downs, get more than half the, when you win first downs, that means you get more than half of the yards that you needed to complete a first down. So if they can win those early on and be able to get it to 3rd and short, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3, things like that, that's going to be a big key for them too, because 3rd and long is not going to be very well. They're going to be able to apply a lot of pressure on Max Duggan, and Georgia's going to have to open up. I mean, they haven't really blitzed the last 2 games where they've really been lit up on the defensive side of the ball between LSU and Ohio State, but they only can blitz 7 times on passing downs in both of those games. So they really didn't try to apply the pressure. They let a guy like CJ Stroud stand back there and make plays with his arm, be able to get out in space and find some of those guys, some of those key weapons. So they're going to have to really, really establish that fast and be able to keep it short in the 3rd down game and be able to continue drives, sustain drives, and things of that nature. So if they don't win those money downs, it's going to be a long night for the Horned Frogs. They need to get off to a fast start, much like they did against Michigan, jumping out 14-0 or 14-2-0 and leading 21-6 at halftime. And it really allowed them to play a relaxed game, stay true to who they are, who they've been all year long. They didn't get out of their element. They were able to salt their game plan away and do the things they wanted to do in that aspect of the game. And that helped by them being able to get out to the fast start. They won the turnover. Well, they actually tied in the turnover battle in that game, but the only game they've lost the turnover battle this season was the Big 12 championship game to Kansas State, where they lost that game, obviously, and turned it over on downs on the goal line in overtime. So the win of that turnover battle is going to be key tonight, because if you look in the last 40 years, only 3 times has a top 2 team been a double-digit favorite and lost the game. The 84 Orange Bowl, Miami was plus 11, beat Nebraska 31-30. 2001 Orange Bowl, Oklahoma plus 11.5, beat FSU 13-2. And the 2003 Fiesta Bowl, Ohio State was plus 12, winning 31-24 against Miami in double overtime. But in those 3 underdog finishes, they were plus 4 in the turnover margin and won third down battles 53 of 99. So over 50% winning those third down battles. So that's going to be real key for me tonight, is who wins that. And I think it's ultimately going to decide who wins the national championship and is able to bring that trophy home for their school. On the other side, Georgia, the key for them, man, has got to be able to protect Stetson Bennett. Ohio State was really able to pressure him and get him outside of his element last week, pressuring him on 32% of his dropbacks, and compared to only 18% all year long. So they've been able to protect him well all season long. It's going to matter, is Darnell Washington going to be able to be healthy? Had that ankle injury, saw him on crutches in the sideline of that semifinal game. So how healthy is he and able to go? Because those tight ends, it's weird to say your tight ends are the key focal point of your offense, but they are for Georgia, and they have been all year long. I mean, future NFL talent laced throughout that group. And so is Darnell Washington going to be able to go? Because he's a big factor, man. He's a big guy that can create some mismatches against that TCU defense. And if he's not able to go, it's really going to be allow them to focus more on Brock Bowers and take him out of the game plan. And Georgia really needs him to be successful to have their offense roll along like it has in games this year. When Brock Bowers has been limited, the offense has really struggled, and Stetson Bennett struggles. It's one of his clutch guys that he can rely on in clutch spots, and looks for him early and often. So if he can't get the ball to him, it really takes away a lot of what this offense can do. And on the other side, they're going to have to get pressure on Max Duggan. Georgia's last 2 games, LSU's Jaden Daniels and Garrett Nussmeier, and Ohio State's CJ Stroud combined for 54 of 85 passes for 850 yards and 7 touchdowns. So, like I said, only blitzing 7 times on passing downs in those 2 games. They really got to be able, because Max Duggan is, he seems to be one of those guys that gets stronger as the game goes along. And if you allow him to get comfortable and gain some confidence that game, he can really make it tough on you down the stretch. And I like what he's been able to do. So if they're going to be able to apply pressure to him and get some of that strong front 7, that talent, all that talent Georgia has throughout that defense, if they can apply pressure to him, it's also going to make for a long night for the Horned Frogs.
Yeah, to defeat, as Sun Tzu says, to defeat what is strong, attack what is weak. And what has been occasionally weak in Georgia is the inability to create pressure defensively from its front, and occasionally giving up pressure offensively from smart defensive schemes for Stetson Bennett, who's a bit undersized as a quarterback. And so if TCU pulls this off, it will be the equal to Villanova upsetting Georgetown in 1984. So that's what they're trying to pull off, a Villanova-style Cinderella shocking upset. So the public's cheering for it. Plenty of folks down in Dallas-Fort Worth are cheering for it. I won't be cheering for it. I will be betting on Georgia. I'll be taking the team that history, talent, matchups, smart money, and shorting the public says to bet. But take it with one big caveat. I've been shorting TCU all year long, and TCU's been burning me all year long. So maybe if the Horned Frogs win, I'll be the first to tip my hat to an extraordinary Villanova-style win, and part of me will be cheering for the Cinderella upset. But my heart might be with the Horned Frogs. My brain says dogs roll big. So we'll see. Any picks from you, Cricket?
I like some of the prop bets. I'm not big on TCU for the game. I'm with you on that. I think Georgia does salt away with the talent factor down the stretch. But like you said, we thought that all year long against TCU. But I really like TCU in the first half. Getting 7 points, they're going to get a whole touchdown in that. And I could totally see them. I wouldn't be mad at springing a little bit on the money line. It's right at about plus 285. You find it between plus 255 and 285 in most sites for the money line in the first half. So I wouldn't be mad at that. But I'd go ahead and take the 7 points right there. For TCU in the first half. That's probably my best bet of the night. I'm not big on the total, man. I think it's a little high. I think you're going to have the jitters and stuff like that. Sitting at 63.5, I could totally see this being a game that, starts off slow. You got the jitters and all the things going on with the national championship and stuff like that. So these guys are going to be a little nervous and maybe not polished early on. So if they start out slow, it's going to be hard to get to that number. But a few props that I do like. You could pick between a select number of scores. I like Georgia to win between 13 and 18 points. That is plus 425 right now. I also like 8+ total TDs in the game at plus 105. I like TCU to have the longest touchdown of the night at plus 140. And I like TCU to win the race to 10 points at plus 190. So there's a few prop bets for you guys that I'm looking at right now. But there's a lot of different ways to bet this game tonight, guys. There's literally things all over you talked about some of those earlier, Uncle Bob, Max Duggan, 1+ rushing touchdowns and things like that. So there's all different kinds of ways to bet this. You don't have to bet the straight up line for the game because I think that's a little sketchy for me. I don't know that I'm going to wind up piling on Georgia like I want to, but I do like TCU early on in the game because I do think it will be close early on. But Georgia's talent and just Kirby Smart, man, winds up getting them over the top down the stretch.
And there's probably some correlations here. If you like Georgia, parlaying the under and Georgia might work. If you like TCU, parlaying TCU and the over might be a good bet. Some of the prop bets, if you like TCU, second half to be higher scoring, Max Duggan to score a touchdown, because given there's some, as you mentioned, some of the injury issues at the running back. So we'll see. Hopefully it'll be a fun, exciting, entertaining game. Good luck to everybody out there. And if you want a full write-up, we have a full write-up of the game at sportspicks.locals.com. And again, everybody, remember to hear on Sports Wars, like, share, and subscribe if you like this content. Thanks, everybody.